and welcome. You're tuning in to Unbreakable Hope with me, your host, Jessica Rose. This podcast is all about seeking the light. In each episode, we chat with someone who has either overcome the darkness or who is actively spreading light within their own community. So let's jump into today's episode. Today, I have a special guest for you that we are going to be talking about relationships. Miriam has been a coach for 11 years in the health and wellness space and really specializes in relationships. You're going to learn so much, and she uses part of her personal story to really showcase how much your life can change when you really do a deep dive into yourself and into your relationships. I am so excited to have this connection from a mutual friend of ours. So jump in with me to this episode and get ready to learn and hear some things that maybe you don't want to hear, but trust me, you need to hear. Well, thank you so much for coming on and being here today.
Thank you for having me. This is such an honor to be on your show here.
I am super excited about our conversation. This is the first time that I've had somebody come on that's really going to be talking about the dysfunctional part of marriage and relationships. So I'm just really stoked. I hope our listeners are really excited to jump in. I'm going to pass it over to you so you can tell our audience a little bit more about you and we'll dive in deeper to the conversation.
Sure. I am a relationship coach. I've been coaching for 11 years. Started as a health and wellness coach, and I saw some patterns not only in my own life but in my clients' lives that a lot of the symptoms that they would have, or the weight gain that they would have, or weight loss was a result of chronic stress because of an ongoing dysfunctional relationship. And I'll tell a little bit about my story, but I got really sick, physically ill when my relationship was in crisis, and my body healed completely when we got through it. So I just thought, that's a really big contributor, and I got so much rich strategies and tools to help me that I would just naturally apply it with my clients, and it ended up being more fun than doing meal plans for people. And so I decided to, most people turn their mess into a message, right? And this has been the biggest triumph of my life to overcome some of the challenges that happen when you're married. And I love giving that gift and helping people create more harmony in their personal relationships, not just marriage relationships. I work with people who have difficult in-laws or a difficult boss or are co-parenting with a difficult ex. So all kinds of relationships, if they're ongoing, they can really contribute to disease processes in our bodies. So that's a little bit. I'm also a military wife. My husband has been Army since I've known him, and that does present some unique mental health challenges for a lot of families in the military, which we're at the heart of a lot of our troubles.
I can definitely see that, and I can relate to a lot of those pieces of your story too. And it goes so much into the book. I talk about it all the time. The Body Keeps Score, and
Great book.
I just did some posts recently about anxiety, what it does to the body, and how we physically ill, and how many times do we get so mad because we're already stressed in the first place when a doctor asks
Yes.
us about our stress level.
Yes.
You're like, I'm
I
sorry.
just want you to fix
Yes,
me.
yes. And I had I've had a reoccurring issue. I won't go into like a lot of details, but I was at the doctor the other day, and I'm like, hey, it's about that time. This happens. It's like, you know, it happens on schedule, and this and this
Mhm.
and that. And she said to me, well, you do live a really stressful life, and stress can cause that too. I'm like, yeah, but my stress level hasn't changed in 5 years. So, like, it's
Well, that's
this.
cumulative. Yeah. It, it's one of those things that builds up and builds up, just like toxins build up in the body in the beginning. Don't really notice it, but the load becomes too great and you know,
Oh yeah. Yeah. So I love that. I love a lot of the things that you said, even like turning your mess into a message of, hey, I've been there. I've gone through this. It made me sick and I got better. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about your story so people know more of your background. I mean, it's amazing, obviously something that you're passionate about and you love. You've been doing it for 11 years and you even refer to it as a gift to other people. How beautiful is that? So yeah, let's dive into your story more.
sure. Sure. So I met my husband just after I got back from 6 months teaching English in China. And so I was a little bit fluffier when I came home because all I did was eat and teach. And he was actually just back in the country from a tour in Kuwait. And just by chance, he was driving through the country and stopped into the restaurant that I was working at. And he was just so gorgeous. Oh my gosh. Just wow, And I was like, I have to talk to that guy. And little did I know, he's just passing through town.
Mhm.
And he was leaving the restaurant, and I just shouted out, "Hey!" And he comes in and opens the door, and I said, "Do you need somebody to walk you out to your car? It's kind of dangerous outside." He's wearing an army t-shirt and he's got muscles for days. So I, I'm pretty forward type of, go-getter. I've been an entrepreneur since I was an adult. So when I see something I want, I just get it.
I love that. That's a lot of how my husband and I met. We met through rowing. We were both out of the military at that time, but I went to check the program out. That's what I did. I'd find programs and resources and let other people know about them. But then I ended up checking my husband out.
Uh-huh.
I came back for him and we've been together ever since.
Ah, cute.
I love stories like that. And I'm glad I'm not the only one that was like, hey,
Right. We have to, well, there was a little bit of flirtation before that, side eye looking at each other. But and we ended up talking for 3 hours outside the restaurant on the bench, and then he stuck around for a few days, more than scheduled, to get to know one another. And then about a year later, we were married. And his family is from a different part of the country than my family, and so that's been an interesting thing to navigate. But in the beginning of our relationship, I ignored a lot of, as we do, as young people, naive people, I ignored a lot of, you know, flags, if you would say, so to speak. One of them was he was very split. I could tell he wanted to be married. He wanted to have a family and have children, but he also really liked being single.
Mhm.
And I don't think he was really ready to be married. And for singledom was fun for me too. And so it was an adjustment for both of us to change our MO. Like when you spend a few years, at the restaurant I was working at, when I'm walking through the restaurant, I'm scanning every table for cute guys. And that happened for years. And so suddenly I'm married and it's like, oh no, I'm not gonna do that anymore. But it was a habit. So it took some adjustment for us. And there was a lot of you know, clashing passions and disagreements and um just being young and stupid and immature. So we did end up helping each other grow up quite a bit. And there was a point, let's see, right after he got back, he was deployed to Iraq in 2008 to 2009. And there was kind of one of those line in the sand moments. And I was ready to be like, cut you loose. This ain't no trap. If you want to be loose, be loose. Go live your life. I don't want you to be here against your will kind of thing. And then um he realized, okay, I need to work on some things. And if you'll stay with me, I'll work on them. And actually things got way better from then on. It was really interesting how it kind of felt like overnight. It was just like a board to the head kind of thing. He was a lot nicer to me, less combative, less critical and nitpicky. And then we started our family, and we had 3 kids in 3.5 years, which, for even a great relationship, that puts an incredible strain on a relationship. And just the nature of the American family now, with the economic situation, it's really, really hard to have a family and a good relationship and put the kind of energy into that a relationship requires, and good parenting requires, when you're exhausted and burnt out from what the economy demands of you to just stay afloat. So I recognize that is a huge, huge challenge for a lot of people, and we don't want to discount that at all. So yeah, that was a struggle, and that was the time when my husband was suffering from a lot of anxiety and depression, and he had suicidal thoughts, and he didn't. I mean, he did see somebody for it in the military, but it was very sporadic, and he didn't have, and I find that a lot of people when they struggle personally, um, existentially, it's, you don't have a faith that something is beyond this body. You're identifying with being a body, and if if you think you're a body, that is going to always be accompanied by despair, aka anxiety, right? Because we don't have any control over this death thing. We're all going to die at some point,
Mhm.
right? And if you don't think anything comes after it, you're going to always feel very powerless and very anxious about that. And that was the main underlying factor for him. And so, of course, being anxious all the time about that and fearful and powerless, that would come out in our relationship. And it was not easy. It was really difficult to be married to him when he was having that situation. And then he would try to manage that anxiety with behaviors that got him into addiction cycles. So, like a really good example of what addiction is, it's like you're in a hole and that pulls you up at the hole and then it drops you right back in. And then it pulls you up out of the hole and it drops you right back in that hole. And so many of us, so many people, they're just coping, right? Just to survive from day to day and manage anxiety in whichever way that they find works, even temporarily. And that was really difficult to figure that out. And I didn't know that I could have boundaries. And I didn't know that I could just have a line of like what I will accept and what I won't accept in my marriage. And so that was the time when slowly happened what I call the pull apart, right? So both of us were really struggling, and I realized, okay, I don't like who I'm being. We both got to be really cynical people, really negative people, and I didn't like that. I didn't like who I was being, and I didn't like how we were feeding each other's, negativity. And so I did have faith that there's something beyond me that created me. And so one day I was driving through town and I realized I missed community. I come from a religious faith that I left when I was actually just before I met my husband, that does community really well. And so I miss that aspect. I don't miss that religion, but I miss that part. And I said, I threw up a prayer and I said, God, I need community. I need connection. I need support system, not just my family, and which is great to have a family as a support system. People who don't even have that, like, I don't know how they're surviving. Um, right? We need people. And so just a few months after that, by chance, not chance, but by divine intervention, I had been volunteering with a local nonprofit, and we needed a space for a guest speaker to come in and give a speech. And one of our volunteers found a space, and I was like, okay, I'll be there. And I show up, and it's this spiritual community. And I'm looking at the symbolism on the walls, and I'm going, oh, because when I threw up that prayer, I was like, I don't know. I mean, I knew what I didn't want in a religious situation, but I didn't know what would I Google? I didn't even know what was it aligned with where I was going. And then I'm sitting in this spiritual community going, oh, and I picked up their little pamphlet and I'm going, oh, okay, yeah, this. What is this? Where am I? And so I started going weekly, and the first few, Sundays that I attended, I'm bawling, crying, and just like, oh, this is my spiritual home. This is my community. And I started moving in that direction towards faith and leaning on the power that is in me and works through me, but is not me. It's not my ego. And so I started to really, dive in and get to know my ego and integrate that. And the more I did that, the more the pull apart, the more the pull apart. And the more difficult it got, the more strained our relationship got, the more resistant and stubborn. And the best word for what he got was resistant. Like, nope, nope, not gonna do any of that. And it was really hard. I remember writing in my journal, my marriage is over. I just remember writing that. Like, I know it. I know my marriage is over. And so during this time, I was health coaching, and I was getting sick. I was getting well, I picked up a parasite in China that I didn't know about it. So that was wreaking havoc. I had a chronic bladder inflammation situation for 2 years. It's an autoimmune condition that there's no cure for. And it was quite painful. Um, I had blepharitis in my left eye, and I started to lose vision in my left eye. I got these fluid-filled like cysts or something on the backs of my ears because I wasn't listening to myself. I got really bad acne around my nose for a whole year. There was a few other things, but I was just falling apart. And I was trying to address the physical symptoms with what I'd been learning in my holistic nutrition course and my health coaching education, acupuncture, herbology, food elimination diets, all the things. And nothing really made a difference, of course. And finally, everything came to a head. It was absolutely toxic. And I knew it was over. And so there was nothing else really to lose. So I was just like, okay. And I fortunately had the help of I went to get a massage, and the woman was a Reiki practitioner. And I said, "Oh, I'm open to that." And she goes, "Oh, good," you know. And so she's working on me. She goes, "Somebody, it feels like somebody stabbed you in the back." And I was like, "Mm, I don't want to see that," because yes, there was a major betrayal, and I didn't want to face it. I didn't want to face the emotions that came from it. I wanted to be this perfect person who's really easy to, forgive people and, all that. And I was like, I don't know what that is. Move on, move on. And then she was working on behind my ears, and she goes, "Who's who's playing the mind games?" And I was like, "I don't know what you're talking about." And then I told her, I was just telling her I had gone to this energy healer, the one who had found the parasite. And she said, "You need to go see her right away." And I said, "Okay." And so I went and saw her, and she knew exactly what was going on. Like, she knew exactly what was going on without me really saying much. And then I'll never forget it. She said, "Merianne, you have to decide what you're willing to accept and what you're not willing to accept in your marriage." And I wanted to back up time and make her take that back because I wasn't ready to make those hard decisions. And she also used the word abuse. And I was like, "No, no, no, no." No, no, no. That's what happens to other people. That's
Mhm.
not, no.
Yeah.
And when she used that word, I wanted to stuff it back in her face. I was like, no. But it was what I needed to hear. And interestingly, the stab in my back over the past few years, I had been developing a knot in my back that was cinched around a nerve. So when I would do certain activities, it would tingle. It wouldn't hurt per se, but it would tingle. And so I was always rubbing my back on the edge of the wall or whatever. And when I left my energy healer, and she gave it to me straight. She was able to help me just look straight at it. She gave me the permission to be angry. She gave me the permission to set boundaries and say no. And she gave me the permission to say no, you're not going to tell me that you're thinking about suicide unless you're actually going to do it. Because I ended up with a little bit of PTSD because he would say it so often that if I was looking for him in the house and it took longer than like a minute to find him, you know what I'm talking about? I would start freaking out that I was going to find him hanging somewhere or in a pool of blood. I don't have that anymore, thank goodness, but that sucked. And it didn't even like hit me. This is not functional. This is not healthy. I was just like, everybody does all that stuff, right? No. And so she helped me to really see and kind of step back and really see things clearly that were muddy before. And so after that, I was driving home, and that knot in my back went, and it
Oh,
hurt so bad that I had to pull over. And I allowed myself to ugly cry, which is something I hadn't allowed myself to do yet. And I said the things that needed to be said. And it's interesting as I was on the way to see him, and there's a lot more details, but it'd take 4 hours to tell the story. But I was on my way to meet up with him. Um, I was not rehearsing what I was going to say. A lot of the time in my marriage, I was like, okay, we've got this problem. I have to rehearse what I'm going to say, and I know what he's going to say back, so I got to say this back. And I would like try to come up with exactly how to word what I needed to say so that he wouldn't get defensive, so he wouldn't clap back, so that he could hear me, you know. And this time I was like calm, and I wasn't rehearsing, and I felt guided. Like the right words are just going to come to me. I'm just going to let them come, and I'll be guided. And that's exactly what happened. I called him on the carpet and this and this and this and this and this. And he did something that I was not expecting. He said, "You're right." And I was like, "Pardon?" He's like, "I am a piece of crap," and he spent the next 2 hours just, yeah, I did this and 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 this. And I was just letting him talk. Like, okay, maybe we're gonna have some accountability here. And that was the beginning of a weekend that I call like our Shack weekend. Do you ever watch The Shack?
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
A lot of really interesting things happened that you you know it was divine, like it was divinely directed. Um, I saw my husband ugly cry, and it was transformative. It was a beautiful healing to watch whatever demon was troubling him be purged from him, and just trusting the process and trusting that voice to give me the right words and tell me what to do. And it was this amazing transformative process. And then he actually was open after that to going to see the energy healer, which he was not open to before. And she was able to do some pretty amazing things. And from then on, I mean, it was a lot of people don't like to hear this when I'm working with people, but when you have betrayal trauma, it takes about 3 to 4 years to come back from that, to rebuild trust. By the way, even in new relationships with strangers, it takes 3 to 4 years to build that rock solid trust in a person where they've got the benefit of the doubt. And if they say something that could have gone either way, you're going, I'm not going to jump down his throat. I'm going to see what he meant by that, right? It takes that long. And so it took about 3 years for us to um, walk back from that. And it was not easy. And a lot of people don't like to hear this either, because people like certainty. I like certainty. Everybody likes certainty, right? And that time is very uncertain. Like, I don't know if I'm still in this. You don't know if you're still in this. And I can't tell you if tomorrow I'm still going to be in this. But today I am. But I can't tell you if tomorrow I am. Because relationships are patterns, right? People, when you come to know people, it's a pattern, right? And so that's why betrayal is so difficult, because it's very destabilizing. Not only does it shake your relationship, but it shakes your own perception of yourself, of your ability to discern what's in front of you, of your ability to assess character, your ability to advocate for yourself. Like, it really shakes the foundations of who you are. And it's very, very destabilizing. So walking back from that was really difficult. And then I had to take a look at myself. So for a while in the beginning, I parked myself in bitter blame, victimhood. It's all your fault. You suck. I hate you, Um, and that's something that is interesting too. A lot of people I've worked with, because of my own experience, I'm able to discern when somebody hates their spouse and they're not aware of it.
Mm.
Because I didn't know that I hated him for a long time. Because that there's so much cognitive dissonance. Like, how can I be married to somebody that I hate? Nope, I'm not going to look at that. Right. So people don't like hearing that one either. So anyway, I had to take my own personal inventory. I had to look at what is blame getting me? What is blame actually? What are the gifts of blame? What are the payoffs? They promise a lot. They promise that they're going to make me feel better, but they're not making me feel better, right? And this victimhood thing, it promises this, yeah, I get to feel the way I want to feel, but I never got to feel the way I wanted to feel. And pointing fingers, all that stuff, it doesn't work. And and then learning how to build trust with somebody that has lost your trust, that's not an easy thing to navigate because a lot of people can go from there and be hyper controlling and hyper like you need to tell me everywhere you're going and all that, and it's just more anxiety. So much more anxiety that I realized at that point in my life, I want to have a relaxed nervous system. I don't want to be with somebody where I have to walk around, like on eggshells, which a lot of people are dealing with. A lot of people are in partnerships, business partnerships, whatever, with people that they feel like they're walking on eggshells. Okay. I did not want that. I knew that. And I knew that I wanted to just be able to be relaxed around my person and be relaxed in relationship and to not trust somebody and to be hyper jealous. That doesn't allow me to be peaceful. And so I had to take my own personal inventory and figure out like who do I want to be from here on out? Like what do I want to leave behind? What aspects of my personality that was contributing to this, that was making this happen? Like not making, right, it takes two, but what was I bringing to it that allowed this to happen? That contributed to this toxic situation. And I had to really purge a lot of the stuff that I was being, who I was showing up as. And that was not easy, man. It felt like when he was giving me his 2 hour long how much of a piece of crap I am. So so it was, what they call a dark night of the soul, for sure. And luckily, I'm I'm a big fan of distance when you're in a toxic relationship, I'm a big fan of distance because when you're in it, you're too close to it, you can't see it. Right? You can't see the dysfunction. You can't see the patterns that are really effed up. And so, even for 4 to 6 weeks, if you can not have any contact or very little contact with that person, you're like, the ahas are just coming fast and furious. Like, whoa, whoa, how did I not see that? Right? And you're starting to see, okay, I know where the problems are. I know what needs to go. I know what needs to stay. And so, luckily, my husband got deployed for 10 months. About about a year, a little over a year after everything really hit the fan. And it was such a blessing because, you know, we were still together, but not together. And he was able to figure out who do I want to be? And he was able to read the books that he needed to read to do his own personal growth. And some of them we read together, um, and just kind of, you know, shared notes, if you will. And then I was able to do that process for me and shed all the things about me that I wanted to leave behind and then claim the things that I needed to claim to be the person I wanted to be in that relationship. And at there was a couple years into it, let's say a couple years into it, um, another big thing got revealed that I had to draw a line on. And I actually packed a bag and I slept at my girlfriend's house and I said, I am not coming back. Figure out what to do with the kids. I said, I'm not coming back until you take full responsibility for your mental health and your spiritual health because I'm not your therapist. I am not your coach. And I'm not going to drop everything that I'm doing when you're finally ready to process what you're processing. And this is very common. Men are very isolated creatures. They don't have community like women do. When women are widowed, they do fine, right? When men are widowed, they do not do well because they don't have friends, they don't have community like women naturally do. Right? And so I was like, I'm not going to tell you how you are going to go about that, but you need to figure that out. You need to figure out your own mental health. You need to have people around that you can reach out to and that can support you along with me supporting you, but I can't be everything. I can't. And once I drew that line and he took me seriously, I was serious. Action always speaks louder than words. Telling somebody, if you don't do this, I'll do this, or if you do this, I'll do this, not so much. You have to take action. And a lot of people say, "Oh, I don't think ultimatums are fair." Yes, they freaking are. Like ultimatums are very, productive. They're very useful. People take you seriously when you pack a bag and you leave, right? So from that moment on, really everything got way, way better. And of course, I did my personal work so that I can respond better when backsliding might happen, you know. Um, and he did too. So now we're able to solve problems instead of hiding them under the rug, which most people do. And we were able to build that own personal capital, if you will, character to be able to come to the relationship with integrity and courage, which are the two big things you really need if a relationship is going to work. You have to have hard conversations, and we have them, and it works. And we've been together 21 years. It'll be 20 years of marriage this October, and I'm very, very grateful. I fully recognize that I could be sitting here as a single woman today. I I'm grateful that he was up for the challenge to do the work, but lots of people are not. Lots of people don't choose to do that, and you got to move on. And so I'm grateful for my children that we've been able to stay together and have a pretty harmonious relationship. And then we have taken it to our community. So during that time, somebody came to our church who was having a really tough time in her marriage, military as well. And she said, is there any kind of like group therapy for couples around here? And I was like, I don't think so. So I just made a meetup group, creating harmonious relationships, and we just started it. And then she didn't really show up for a couple years. But it was actually really great for not just for the community, but for myself as well. So I had, in response to my hurt and licking my wounds, I had taken on some um, ideologies and some beliefs that are not harmonious for male-female relations. And I was fortunate enough to, the group attracted a male marriage and family therapist slash male divorce coach, men's divorce coach. And he came for a few weeks and kind of watched what was going on. And he sat me down, he gave it to me. He's like, girl, you are screwing this up. And he told me everything I needed to hear. And I was like, oh, crap. So that was such a gift to hear the truth, for somebody to stand in integrity for the integrity of my marriage. And I was able to turn some things around and get grounded in reality of what male and female dynamics are and are not. And the male creature and the female creature are very different. Let's not kid ourselves about that. Um, and it was quite a gift. And so now I twice a month I run the Creating Harmonious Relationships group. And of course, I'm a relationship coach. I work with individuals and couples. I tell people, look, I don't have, contrary to popular belief, your spouse does not have to be on board with this. Like, they don't have to go to coaching or therapy or whatever. You can have a tremendous influence and what's the word? You can have a tremendous uh, impact, that's the word, on the whole relationship just by changing the way you perceive, the way you interpret things, and then you show up differently. And by necessity, if you're showing up differently, they have to adapt if they want to stay in the relationship and play a game, right? Everything's a game, right? If they want to play a game, they have to learn the new rules. They have to adapt. And if they're game for that, if they're willing to learn new rules and learn a new person and how to interact with a new person, thereby becoming a different person themselves, then it can work. And if not, then they remove themselves.
That's a really good point. My husband would always joke that we're training each other just like we train a dog. We
Indeed.
we train people every day on how we want to be treated. So I
Yes.
I love when you were saying you were talking about that whole it's not I was responsible for this, but what part did I play in this? And how can I make sure to set those boundaries? And I even love that connection you made with like ultimatums. Ultimatums are like a great way to set a hard boundary to say, look,
Mhm.
I'm not okay with this, so I'm
Right.
going to do this unless you're okay with this. And I
Right.
think that is a huge, huge part. There was a couple things even in my relationship where I remember I told a lot of friends and family know this, is that for our wedding, my husband drank a lot. So I told him that he was not allowed to drink. He had to be as close to sober as possible when we said our vows, or I was walking away and he would never see me again. And I think there was a few people who didn't really believe how serious I was, but it had
Mm.
become an issue over the year leading into our marriage. That wasn't an issue when we were dating. And again, maybe like you said, maybe I just didn't see that then. And
Right.
I
Yeah, we can't see what
right? But my husband respected that to the point he took it way further than I expected, where he didn't drink at all. And we went all the way through to the last dance. And then he asked me, is it okay if I have some drinks with the guys now? And I was like, oh, yeah. Wow, I didn't expect, I at least want to get through the vows with you being sober. I had a negative experience growing up that I had seen, and an experience I had when I was a young adult that I saw at a wedding. And I was like, I don't want that to happen to me, But I was like,
Oh.
he
Mm.
honored me the entire night with that request.
Mm.
And I think that's a good point, is that we have a role in it. We're not the cause of it
No,
necessarily,
but you
but
do play a role. Yeah.
exactly.
Well, if you are familiar with addiction and recovery,
Mhm.
which I deal with a lot in my practice, the addict is always with a codependent. Like that's how it works. And the codependent is definitely playing a part in how the alcoholic is allowed to continue being who they're being.
Mhm.
So recovery is both sides. It's the same, addiction and codependency is the same thought patterns. They just manifest differently.
Yeah. The brain, it's been so fascinating researching the brain, and how many times I've
I
been told
know.
my husband, so I'm like, it's the brain. We don't know. It's the brain. And it's so powerful of an organ that we don't give it the credit it deserves.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting, like people have their superpowers. For me, the psyche, like I get it. If I learn something new, I just get it about the human psyche and human behavior. But like if my husband has tried to explain electricity and alternating current and like direct current and how, like all that stuff, and I'm like, nope, nope. So we all have our competencies, right? He's really good at that. I'll just stick to the people business.
That's definitely the same with my husband and I, where I'm like, uh-huh, yeah, uh-huh. And then well, when he used to talk, he would say stuff like that to me, and I'm like, you're not remotely interested in this. And he said, nope, but I'm here to support you. Uh-huh, uh-huh. And he's
Oh,
like, we'll both
that's
kind of do that fake, like, uh-huh, to gesture like we have no clue what you're talking about. If you want to keep talking about, we'll support. But also if you're like, okay, I'm wasting my energy because I'm actually trying to get you to understand this. Also, like, just so you know, like,
right.
yeah, no.
Yeah, how supportive and generous we are.
Yes, exactly, exactly.
So yeah, that's my story, and that's what I do. I help people to shift their perceptions from fear to love. That's the basic thing that I
Mm,
do. If your relationship is not going well, it's because you are letting fear drive the show. Even if they're the problem,
mm.
you are letting fear drive the show, I promise. And the antidote is to switch your perceptions from fear to love. And most people don't know what love is actually, because most of us have a concept of love that's codependency based, right? It's fear based, lack, insecure, I need you, I can't live without you. That is not love. That's actually closer to addiction. Um, but yeah, my job is to help people understand what love really is, which is the closest way. It's hard to describe love because it's so big. It's actually a quality of being that recognizes that something that seems to be separate from you is not separate from you. It actually is you. So it means that if I'm meeting your needs, it feels just as good as it does to meet my own needs.
I love that. That's very beautifully said. And I think that's a really easy thing the way you worded it, I think it's easy to really conceptualize that piece of it.
Yeah, it's a very hard thing. Just as much as it is hard to describe God, it's easier to describe what God isn't, because we get into real trouble when we try to describe what God is. Same thing with love. It's easier to describe what love isn't, and then what we're left with is whatever's left.
Well, I love that we've had a really great deep conversation. And one thing that really stood out to me that I love if you could go maybe a little bit more detail in is the actual healing of your body because you
Oh,
mentioned all this autoimmune stuff going on.
mhm.
And I was definitely at a point in my life where I experienced that and I went through my own journey. So I'd love to dive in more about what your journey looked like and yeah, maybe help
Yeah.
people out.
So so actually when we were able to just face the problems, the worm at the core, and from there on out, my body started healing immediately and it healed completely. And an autoimmune condition that I had for 2 years disappeared and never came back. So my acne cleared up, everything cleared up. I'm super healthy now, you know, and it was just astonishing to me that that happened so quickly after just facing the things that I didn't want to face, after just deciding to be the hero of my own life and face the things that are hard to face, which is I can tell you that if, anybody who's got problems, that's their biggest problem. They're not facing what they could face.
Yeah.
And my body healed so fast. And so it was just astonishing to me. And that was the biggest teacher for me about how our spiritual health, our emotional health, our psychological health really impacts our physical health and vice versa, right? If your physical health is not going well, it's really hard to have a healthy mindset when you're in pain all the time, right? And we know that junk food causes depression. We know that. So those things are going to go hand in hand. And that's why I talk about environment too. Like, environment counts for a huge amount of who you are and how you show up in the world. If you're eating junk food and you have somebody in your life who is very emotionally volatile, you're going to be sick. So, anyway, that's my soapbox.
Yeah, no, I love it. I think it goes back to kind of what we said earlier, right? When doctors ask about your stress level, most of us are already stressed and frustrated. We want to fix the problem, but realizing what the
What
real
is the problem? Yeah.
and I think that there it's so especially being in the behavioral health field for over 10 years now, it's we do not give our brains the credit. And I love that you even brought up the environment, right? Like what your environment is. I've been in toxic work environments that literally made me ill. I think a lot of people can
Yes.
probably relate to this is, the Sunday night sickness.
Oh,
You
yeah. Oh,
get to
yeah.
work on Monday morning and you're out of nowhere. Your body knows and you all of a sudden get sick,
Mhm.
nauseous, or whatever the case may be. So I think that's a really great point is that our bodies are this amazing, amazing creation that can do great things. And oftentimes, yeah, when we are sick, it's our defense mechanism telling us that something's wrong,
Mhm.
but we don't really read it that way. So I love that you shared some of the amazing things that you did do, like Reiki. The girl who does my facials, she does Reiki too, which is really cool. I've had some real fun experiences with different stuff like that. So hopefully that encouraged some people listening to try some other things out. It's we can't throw pills at everything, right?
Mm-mm.
There's a time and place for medication, but there is definitely a huge part in healing ourselves from within. And I think you've shared a lot of really great examples and just a testament. And I didn't even know half the things you were saying when you were like, I was sick and I had this and this and this and this and this. I thought, oh my goodness. Um, so to be able to come back and say, yeah, all that's gone now because I
Yeah.
did the real healing my body needed.
Mhm.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And then, I saw the pattern reflected with my clients too. I had a client come to me who she had had consistent weight gain over the past 3 years. She was trying everything to get this weight off because she was used to being a certain size. And I looked at her 2-week food journal and it looked pretty good. She's a very active person, super strong. Her blood work looked pretty good. And I was just like, this is not physical. So when did the weight start coming on? She said, well, 3 years ago. And I said, well, what was going on 3 years ago? And she said, well, I got married. Okay, how's that going? Oh, it was not going well at all. And so I was like, okay, this is the root cause. We need to address this. And thank goodness I had the experience and the tools to, it wasn't where like, well, good luck. Hope you find somebody that can help you. I was like, okay, let's address this. And we worked on what was in her lane. He was working with a marriage coach himself, which was great. And in like 11 months, the whole marriage turned around from, I mean, we're talking, it was bad. to like they're both in the best marriage they'd ever been in, and her weight came off.
Mm.
So, and then I had another client who had the same bladder condition that I had, and she was on medication for it. And we dove in, and yeah, she had some really bad blood and resentment in a long-term friendship that was going on. And so we went in and healed that, and she didn't need to take her meds anymore because her symptoms went away.
Yeah, it's
So
amazing.
it's pretty amazing.
Well, I'm definitely going to have in the descriptions below ways to connect with you, to be able to use your services. And I want to give you a minute, maybe talk a little bit more about some of the things that you do offer, some of the big things that you have coming out or have come out.
Sure. So the most common way that people work with me is one-on-one coaching. Like I said, I work with individuals and couples, and it's usually a 12-week program. So it's a weekly usually Zoom session that's recorded, which a lot of my clients appreciate the recording because anything we repeat, we learn better and faster. And and then they get a lot of other things along with that, the program, the 12-week program. And then now I am doing, like I said, the twice a month group called Creating Harmonious Relationships. And I have some courses coming out. So I don't know if you're familiar with positive psychology. Yes. Okay. So I'm a huge fan of Marty Seligman and his movement, and he came up with a six-pillar framework or model for wellness, overall human wellness. And I have a course based on that framework coming out, hopefully end of March. I'm working my tail off to get that done. But it's the PERMA model, if you're familiar, and the R in PERMA, the acronym stands for relationships. But relationships are not, isolated. They exist within a person's entire life. And so, if you want wellness in one area, you gotta address the disease in all the other areas too. So yes, that course is coming out, and then I will be having some courses on relationships, one for married men, one for single men, one for married women, one for single women, because I mean, there's a lot of overlap with that, but there are some unique um, things that we deal with by gender and by relationship status that need to be addressed uniquely in each group. And then I'm percolating another course. Um, I want to call it a name that has a bad word in it, but it's
I love it.
basically become unmanipulatable. So in pop culture psychology du jour, it's very common to hear people throwing out the word narcissist. I'm really annoyed with that, but anyway, most of us are on somewhere on the spectrum of emotional maturity, and some people are on the low end of emotional maturity, right? And so a lot of times they get conflated with narcissists, and some people truly are actual narcissists. But these people are very good at manipulating people emotionally and psychologically, and the way that you become unmanipulatable is what I'm going to be dealing with on my course so that they can try whatever they want to try, and you're like cool as a cucumber. You're like, okay, nice try, but that's not gonna work.
That sounds amazing and much needed. I'm so excited to have a mutual connection that brought us together
Yeah.
to learn more about you and what you do. And I've loved this chat so much. I'll have all of your links below. I really hope people at least give you a follow if anything, because you put out some amazing stuff on your social media as well. But hopefully people who are seeking and needing that help, that they reach out to you to get that really good help, because this has been an amazing hour of us chatting.
Thank you. Oh, and I forgot to say I do have a community. I just started a community where we're sharing lots of great value there. So please join the community. It's going to be a great place to get connected to people who are on the journey of healing their relationships too.
Yes, that's always super important, because we're not alone, we just feel alone. So that's a really
Yeah.
great opportunity to have a community of support as we go through this crazy thing we call life.
Yes. And thank you so much for having me on. It's such a pleasure and an honor to be on your show.
Yes, thank you for being here and sharing some light with our listeners.
You're welcome.
Thank you, listeners, for tuning in. If you found this episode inspiring, please share it with someone you never know who needs more light in their life. May this serve as a reminder that there's always darkness in the world. Do not let it consume you. Always seek the light. Please take a moment to do the good old subscribe, rate, and review. Your support means so much to me, and it helps me spread more light and love. Until next time, be kind, be loving, be human, and don't ever let anyone steal your hope.